There are many what ifs we can and do ask ourselves on a daily basis.
What if I crash the car today? What if I get robbed? What if I get sick? What if I win the lottery? What if I die soon, or worse? What if Kamala wins the election? Oh wait, Trump won. Whew, just missed Kamala getting there.
We can become obsessed with the what if scenario mindset, but this is part of who we are. I certainly get caught up in the what if mentality. There's nothing wrong with that, provided it doesn't become an obsession. But if I'm honest, I do sometimes become obsessed with these thoughts. For example, what if life isn't what we think? What if the world around us is not what we believe it to be? What if my life isn't my own? What if I'm being controlled, manipulated, cajoled even, and that from day one? What if everything is a lie? Now, those are some very big what ifs. And I don't know about you, but these are questions I really want answers to, because I think they are some of the most important issues we can inquire into. These matters lay at the heart of, well, everything. If you are someone who has followed this channel, you will know that I have personally come to believe that this planet is run as a prison, where we are all the things I've just described: controlled, manipulated, enticed, and deceived, being just a few of the things that explain what is happening to us. Now, none of this need to be speculation, because there is ample evidence, both current and historical, that can provide us with many of the answers we require. It's all there, just waiting to be uncovered. And much of it is in plain sight. We just don't choose to see it. When we look around us, especially these past 4 years or more, the planet seems more like a world of dystopian, futuristic, nightmarish science fiction than anything else. Only it's not science fiction. This is stuff that's happening to us in real time. This is our reality, simulated or not. And I'm the grumpy grandpa, trying my best to point it out. I find it extremely interesting that since the election of Donald Trump, which really reflected the mood of the US people, there has been a seismic shift in the attitude of other nations, revealing the population's dissatisfaction with their feckless, spineless, weak, and ineffective leaders, some of whom were guilty of turning on their electorate in the form of mandates, lockdowns, and the suppression of free speech during the COVID debacle. And this indignation isn't restricted to just politicians. The people's ire is beginning to be directed at big tech also, and their role in silencing our voices, like Mark Zuckerberg, who is now doing a U-turn on the censorship Facebook engaged in during the pandemic and the US 2020 elections, in silencing the Hunter Biden laptop narrative, for one. Something he is now confessing to. Sure, it's a win for freedom, but people don't forget that easily, and he's no longer trusted. He has lost all credibility, as far as I'm concerned. Not that I'm on Facebook. I came off that platform years ago. Free speech is a fundamental human right, yet it is constantly under attack. The establishment began to seriously take notice and consider restricting free speech when the UK voted for Brexit back in 2016. And then 4 months later, in a shock move, the US voted for Donald J. Trump, narrowly beating the Clinton beast. All of this despite the warnings the elites were issuing in panic and desperation. It was then that these so-called leaders began to realize that free speech was a systemic threat to their agenda and could no longer be tolerated on the internet. Because if they allowed it, the population could no longer be controlled. If you can't control how the people think, remember, perception is everything. If you can no longer control their behavior, including their voting habits, you have no control. But having said that, the three-letter intelligence agencies have known this for decades. There's always been censorship to one degree or another. But during the period I just mentioned, they pushed censorship to new heights, and it continues to today. However, slowly, over the past few years, we have begun to see the censorship machine being constructed behind the scenes to justify suppression over the internet, which is being portrayed as something honorable, moral, and decent, something absolutely necessary for online safety. Now, obviously, the puppets couldn't be upfront and say, we must censor your political speech because we need to control you. What they did, however, was to use deceitful, noble-sounding terms like disinformation and misinformation, or we are fighting digital hatred and hate speech. All kinds of noble or even bland-sounding objectives were claimed that were nothing more than political censorship, masquerading as something else. And this continues even today. Why discard something that works, right? This is when we saw groups that hadn't existed prior to this emergency appear. Groups that were extremely well financed by US intelligence agencies and other Western intelligence organizations. Neoliberals, billionaires like Bill Gates and George Soros gave their financial support. And so this huge suppression industry emerged overnight. And it is all justified based on this completely fabricated and concocted expertise, where we were suddenly told that somehow there was a group of people out there who instantly had become qualified, who had a credential to go around decreeing what is true and what is false, differentiating truth from falsity, and not just in their own trained area of expertise. Oh no. Bill Gates, if you remember, had somehow become an expert on vaccines. And I'm sure that had nothing to do with his investments in the pharmaceutical industry. God forbid we should think there is any kind of conflict of interest there. That's just disinformation. But more than that, we were told that there are certain groups of people who are highly trained in the art of disinformation. They, and only they, can reliably identify disinformation in any field of discipline. And once they decree something to be disinformation, not only should people distrust that so-called disinformation, but it ought to be banished from the internet entirely. Disinformation like Hunter Biden's laptop from hell, which was Russian disinformation, of course. Not. It's great when you have the luxury of hindsight. And so, ever since 2016, there has been this growing industry, this ministry of disinformation. And it would be bad enough if this were just an industry that was well funded by different states and billionaires. But the problem has become far worse than that, because these industries are joined at the hip to governments who use these agencies when they want to politically censor and then justify it by saying, we're not censoring you for political ends. Oh no, perish the thought. No, it's just that there are experts who have decreed this information to be disinformation. We only have your best interest at heart. Remember when Biden said this?
And we brought Israelis and Palestinians together at a political level, and and Aqua and as well as Shroud.
Remember that scandal? That wasn't disinformation. I really don't know what that was. But of course, what they said they were going to do is not how it turned out. So many, not just debatable claims, but true allegations ended up being censored because they were politically inconvenient to these groups that had a political agenda, and still do, and therefore declared it to be disinformation, even though it so often ended up being true. COVID was probably the most blatant example, where from the very beginning experts decreed, based on nothing, that they knew for certain that the origin of the COVID virus was not a leak from the Wuhan lab. That was just disinformation. Instead, we were told that it was a proven fact in January of 2020, right when the pandemic emerged, that they knew for certain that it had jumped species. All lies, of course, and the mainstream media were complicit in spreading those lies. What a surprise. They're paying for it now, though. CNN, MSNBC, ABC. But now, 4 years later, major governments around the world, including major parts of the US government, believe that it's far more likely that the virus actually escaped from the Wuhan lab rather than occurring naturally in nature. The claim of disinformation occurs over and over as the elites panic and struggle to maintain their hold over people's minds. This is a repressive and authoritarian industry that has grown out of control, and it suffered a great backlash when we the people said, enough is enough, when other freer media platforms emerged and people spoke with their feet. Now, this latest announcement from Zuckerberg outlines new policies enacted by Meta, the parent company of Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, policies more friendly to free speech. These are platforms that have often themselves been quite repressive and acquiesce to all kinds of political censorship dictated by the Biden administration. The Quislings are now issuing a series of new policies to cut Facebook and Instagram off from this disinformation industry. But I still don't trust Zuckerberg. Part of the problem why the world is not what it seems is due to disinformation platforms like Facebook and Instagram. When Zuckerberg comes out and announces changes in policy, which on the surface appears to be proclamations of the importance of free speech, we should be skeptical. These entities are experts on branding, on giving out an appearance of something other than what is real. Zuckerberg might make changes for now, but in the future will just as easily return to the censorship ideal. And what are we to make of the huge scandals Comrade Starmer and his Labour government are facing right now in the UK? One of the biggest of all the various scandals is the child grooming gang cover-ups. Starmer is, of course, using these very tactics to try and silence critics like Elon Musk, who is exposing his possible complicity. UK leader Starmer slams lies and misinformation after attacks from Elon Musk. Of course, he doesn't help himself when he refuses to conduct inquiries into these scandals. Why is that, if he has nothing to hide? The truth is, an ancient and massive secret society has been playing with mankind for centuries, and today they are bigger and more powerful than ever before. Most people have heard of the Illuminati. I call them the Cabal, a dark, evil, and sinister group that controls the world, and their influence reaches into governments, religious powers, and businesses. These despots have not infiltrated the governments. They created them. Just look at how the US government has acted these past 4 years. And of course, the corruption goes back much further than that. And you will see how there must be a hidden hand pulling the strings of our puppet politicians. And this is done largely with the help of the corrupt three-letter agencies, the usual suspects. These parasites try to control every aspect of our lives, from fashion to food, from education to technology. History is twisted and rewritten, from revolutions to royalty, from propaganda to world war, from birth to death. Every aspect of our lives is curated and controlled. They are unseen, unheard, and yet their intent is clear: to change the world for their own ends. They are manipulating the world through new technologies, bringing down old empires to make way for a new form of one world rule. And people like Alex Jones and David Icke have been warning us of this for decades. The cabal members, who are relatively few in number, are under the achonic influence. The mind virus controls them. They foster terrorism, create diseases to control the masses, and much more. And by understanding these things, we can see more clearly their intentions and work to thwart them. Groups like the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, Jesuits, Knights Templar, Opus Dei, MI6, CIA, and others are all implicated in the grand scheme. And the more we shine a light on their shenanigans, the closer we come to derailing their plans. The Farsight Institute, a remote viewing group, has just completed a project on the mind manipulation of our leaders directed by the ET presence, the bad ET presence. Check this out.
All right, Yeme, this is the target reveal for Omega Mysteries. We have 3 focuses for this Omega Mysteries project. Presidential ET hybrid manipulators assigned to mentally influence Biden, Harris, and Trump at the current time. And you did this session, let me see when you actually did this session, October, the 11th of October. So that was before the election. They have hybrids that look just like us. They look like humans. David Jacobs has studied them often in his books. He's a retired professor from Temple, and Walking Among Us is one of his last books. And these hybrids actually get placed in important places, like around important people, and they mentally manipulate those people. And so we were interested in October, before the election, what they were doing with respect to Joe Biden, and that was focus 1. Had focus 2, what were they doing with respect to Kamala Harris? And then focus 3, what were they doing with respect to Donald Trump? So these are ET manipulators in the heart of the presidential campaign in October of 2024. And what were they actually doing? We have a number of different ET manipulators that are possible in case
These
you come
are
up.
the manipulators, not the presidents.
No, yeah, we were not going after Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump.
Because I was like,
We were going after the ETs that were manipulating them, but they look just like us. They look human. Calm,
look like
collected
that.
mind, very focused, seems sort of compulsive, constantly reorganizing the mind to crack something more order, doesn't seem to speak to many people. And he's receiving information from another source internally inside his mind. He's getting it, putting the information out physically into a physical object of some sort. He recognizes the thoughts are not theirs, but he believes the voice is going to help him achieve something. So he's definitely a mental manipulator. He can communicate directly with the voice he hears internally. That's very fascinating. I mean, you did this totally blind, and it's an ET manipulator, and you're actually watching an ET manipulate people's minds. And so this is, I mean, that's pretty good, in terms of verification. That was the idea of the target, and that's exactly what you got.
Okay, first, it is clear that the remote viewers did perceive subjects who are highly telepathic and who were involved in manipulating the thoughts and emotions of human subjects. ET manipulators are a real thing. Again, only the so-called bad ETs do this kind of stuff.
Now, if you are interested in this kind of thing, you can sign up to the Farsight Prime website. I'll leave a link in the comments. So if this manipulation is taking place, surely it happens with the cabal who seek to control the world. They are the front men for the handling of humanity. Look right now at the collapse of trust in various governments around the world. The Canadian people have seen through Trudeau and his connection to the World Economic Forum's globalist agenda and is forcing him out. Trump won big here in the US, despite the deep state's lawfare against him. Comrade Starmer and his incompetent party are in distress and disarray over several issues. The big one I already mentioned is the cover-up of the grooming gangs. And don't forget his treatment of old age pensioners with the rollback of the winter fuel payments. I don't know how he's going to survive all of this with his doubling down on these policies. The people clearly didn't vote for that. All over Europe, the various globalist agendas are collapsing, or that's how it looks. But never underestimate these vermin. Once you see what's going on, you can't unsee it. It will change your perception, which is the one thing these parasites don't want. This elusive group want to remain anonymous, out of sight and sound. But it's up to us to blow the whistle and point them out. Only then can we bring them down. For now, that is. We must remember that the odds are stacked against us. This is a prison, and our jailers are not stupid. Well, not the ones behind the curtains, I mean. Starmer, well, he isn't that bright. Sleepy Joe, well, he's, Kamala? Yeah. Gruesome Newsom and his handling of the Palisades fire leaves a lot to be desired. Even the owner of the LA Times has come out saying how crazy it is that we continually elect incompetent mukaos. There are not many politicians out there that are proficient and skilled in leadership. It remains to be seen whether Trump will prove himself this time round. I think he has learned lessons since the last time, and things are looking good in that area. We'll see, I guess. The world is spiraling out of control. As a species, we tend not to like change. We like the world to be the way we believe it is. Finding out that it's totally different is often not pleasant, challenging even. But as always, the truth sets us free from delusion. I wish I could come to you with an upbeat message, something to give hope against despair, to declare that the end of the war is just around the corner. Unfortunately, being a student of history, which tends to repeat itself, there is not much there to encourage us. The only way we can be sure of a victory is when the Great Awakening affects a majority of the prison inmates and initiates a revolution from within. Is that happening right now? Maybe. An increase in awareness is appearing to be taking place. But there is also a great pushback happening simultaneously from the cabal. These bloodsuckers don't give up easily, and we can't afford to become lethargic. We do so at our peril. Until the next time.